Hello, I'm Carol Fleck, and on behalf of the ADDitude team, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD experts presentation, Anxiety in Children, Overlooked Signs and Effective Supports. Anxiety is the most common mental health concern among children and teens today. Although anxiety is highly treatable, its symptoms in children are often overlooked by parents, teachers, and medical professionals alike, and not without consequence. Early diagnosis and intervention are key to minimizing difficulties later in life. In today's webinar, we'll learn more about the signs of anxiety in children and teens and the factors that contribute to it. We'll also learn about the strategies and tools that help anxious children and teens. Leading today's presentation is Dr. Caroline Buzanko. Dr. Buzanko is a licensed psychologist and clinical director of Koru Family Psychology. She has worked with children who have neurodevelopmental disorders and their families for more than 20 years. She focuses on maximizing connection, confidence, and resilience. Dr. Buzanko facilitates ADHD-related groups and workshops across North America and is an adjunct assistant professor at the University of Calgary. Before I hand over the microphone to Dr. Buzanko, I have just a few housekeeping items. Those of you tuned in to the live webinar may download the slides now by clicking on the Event Resources section of your webinar screen. And if you're interested in the Certificate of Attendance option, look for instructions in the email you'll receive about an hour after the live broadcast. If you're listening in replay or podcast mode, visit ADDitudemag.com and search podcast number 401 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the certificate of attendance option. If you support the work we're doing here at ADDitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit ADDitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for ADDitude Magazine for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. Finally, the sponsor of this webinar is Play Attention, Improve Executive Function and Self-Regulation. For over 25 years, Play Attention has been helping children and adults thrive and succeed. Tufts University School of Medicine found Play Attention significantly improved attention, executive function, academic performance, and behavioral control of ADHD students. Your program will include a lifetime membership and a personal executive function coach to customize your plan along the way. Home and professional programs available. Call 800-788-6786 or click the link on your screen to schedule your free one-on-one consultation. Visit www.playattention.com to learn more. ADDitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. So without further ado, I'm so pleased to welcome Dr. Buzanko. Thank you so much for joining us today and for leading this discussion.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you all for joining me. I'm so happy that you're all here. This is such an important topic because anxiety is the #1 mental health concern amongst our kiddos. I have so much information that I want to go through, and I'm going to try to get through it. I have ADHD myself, so I'm very overly ambitious, and I think I can get through it. We'll see in our short amount of time, but we'll see. Yeah. You've got the replay, so you can always go back and listen. So here's one really important thing when we look at anxiety. It's not something our kiddos outgrow. Oftentimes, we'll take our kids to see the doctor, pediatrician, or other professionals, or even just family members are saying, it's okay, it's just a phase, they're going to outgrow it. But it's not something that they outgrow. It usually gets progressively worse over time. Early intervention then is therefore really important because anxiety often leads to depression. And a lot of our kiddos aren't getting the support that they need over time. And unfortunately, most adults mental health problems, over 70% of our adult mental health problems actually started in childhood, and they just didn't get the support that they needed. And it becomes a lot harder as we get older. So today I'm going to show you this anxiety compass. It's something that I've been developing over the past 10 years. It kind of gives us a roadmap of the things that we need to understand to be able to support our kiddos and for them to learn the skills that they need to manage their anxiety. The first is to understand, and the first two to are really for parents. This is so, so important, and other mental health professionals, because how we respond makes all the difference in the world. So just a really brief overview of what anxiety is. Typically, we see something that scares us, this amygdala, this little pink thing in the middle of our brain. It's the size and shape of an almond. It sends off alarms, and it's sending off alarms to our HPA axis. So essentially, our kidneys are back here. Right above them are adrenal glands. Those are those orange things right on top of the kidneys. Sends out adrenaline out into the system to get our body ready to fight and run away. So all these alarms start going so that we can protect ourselves. Now, I just want to say, worries are normal. That amygdala is in there to protect us. It's very important. We cannot get rid of it. And I think that's really important for you to understand. But I do want to quickly look at what normal worries are versus disordered worries. So, worries are to be expected, developmentally appropriate. When you've got a little guy who's 3 years old leaving their parents for the first time to go to preschool or daycare, that's normal for them to have some separation anxiety, because you are my person to make sure I don't get eaten, right? So we all have these fears. That makes sense. When they're those younger years, it makes sense that they're scared of monsters. It starts to become a problem, though, when they're in grade 4, still having a hard time separating from parents. Life transitions. My daughter started high school this year. That was a huge anxiety-provoking stressor, right? Just going to a new school, new expectations. All of these things can be really stressful for a lot of our kiddos. And then any stressful experience, anything new can be hard for them. Car accidents, there's a lot of things that worries we can expect. So we want to expect to worry. That's normal. Now, when we're looking at normal worries, we got to remember they're temporary. They're not interfering with our kiddos' functioning. They're not avoiding going to school, for example. They're not avoiding going up and meeting new people. And they're still able to do life and achieve everything that it is that they want to do. So that's really important. So why are we talking about this? Why are you all here? Obviously, there's a problem when there's too many worries. When we have normal worries, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. With anxiety, however, there is no end. There's just this constant level of worry all the time. A lot of our kiddos just even have a low level of arousal all the time. But that amygdala, which is already so strong, if you've got a kiddo with ADHD, that amygdala is already so overactive. And when you add worry and anxiety on it, it's triggering the alarm all the time. It's just setting off the alarms all the time. I love using the analogy of the safety alarm in your house, the fire alarm. If you've ever burnt toast or burnt food, it rings, super annoying, and you go underneath and you start fanning away, super annoying, but you can't get rid of it. You have to have that fire alarm in your house. Same thing with our amygdala. We have to have it in there for the event of a real fire, real danger, but it's trigger happy. It's just ringing all the time. Quickly, let's look at anxiety. I talked about the fight flight response. We see danger, our brain triggers, puts our body into protection mode. I take a transdiagnostic approach, meaning I don't care if your kiddo's scared of going to school, or if they're scared of everything, or needles, or monsters. It's anxiety. Essentially, it's we get sucked into whatever it is, whatever the fear is that we have. We get so overwhelmed and we feel that we can't handle it. So that's number one thing to remember as a parent or a mental health professional, anyone working with kiddos who are anxious. Anxiety is the belief that I can't handle it. You fill in the blanks. I can't handle needles. I can't handle dentists. I can't handle putting my hand up in class. I can't handle sleeping alone in my bed with the door closed. Those types of things. That's what anxiety is. I can't handle it. So how does it show up? There's a few different ways it shows up. One is through affect, obviously through the emotion, but a lot of physical symptoms, which I will be talking about as well. So that body's gearing up to protect itself. We're going to obviously feel a lot of things physiologically in our bodies. Now, if you've got an anxious kiddo, a lot of them are more sensitive to those symptoms. And sometimes they don't even necessarily have a worried thought. It's just all the yucky feelings that are coming up for them. Some of them, as they get older, just want to, check their heart rate all the time, or check their fever all the time, check their temperature, go to the doctor all the time. They don't want to go to school, right? So they feel sick, they feel headachy, and we've seen a huge increase in school avoidant behaviors. And a lot of it was starting out with not feeling good. And so we've reinforced these sorts of behaviors. Anxiety shows up in our thoughts, all those big, unrealistic, catastrophic sort of thinking, right? With COVID, I saw so many kiddos who parents still had to leave the house to go to work, and they believed like it was a zombie apocalypse out there. They were so scared that their parents weren't going to come back, right? There was just so much danger. And so they're going into these what ifs. The other thing is with the thoughts is, again, anxiety makes them believe I can't handle it. So they become really dependent on other people. They are clingy. They need you to fall asleep with them. They can't fall asleep on their own. They need you there. So there's a lot of co-sleeping. We also see behaviors. So there's two types of behaviors that we can see. One is internalizing. That's where kiddos are increasing their own distress. They're anxious, they're sad, they could be irritable, maybe their eating is affected, sleep is affected, low self-esteem. They're isolating more and more, difficulties concentrating. Oftentimes it can look a lot like ADHD, which I'll talk about in a second. And it's even worse if we already have kiddos with ADHD. The other piece is externalizing. So these kiddos who engage in these behaviors, they're increasing everybody else's distress because they're lashing out. And if you think about it, if you have ever stubbed your toe or hit your head on something, you've probably sworn, right? You swear and right? You get aggressive. That's the pain part of the brain that's triggered. And when our pain part of the brain is triggered, we lash out. And so this is really important for you to think about. I'm often asked about the difference between ODD and anxiety. And I will say, I don't actually believe in ODD. And I'm sorry if you've got a kid with ODD, because I know parents are like, but if you knew my kid. But oftentimes it's anxiety, anger, aggression. Those are secondary to fear. And so it's usually fear. They're lashing out. They're trying to protect themselves. And so if you think about if my kiddo is feeling like he needs to defend himself, he's not feeling safe, there's pain, you're probably going to respond very differently than if you think he's being manipulative, disrespectful, aggressive, and all of those kinds of things. So it's really important to understand. Now, anxiety limits learning. It takes up so much brain power to be able to cope with all of these worries. And our brain is racing. With ADHD, they're already having a hard time with their executive functions. So they can't concentrate. They can't follow instructions. They can't transition between things. It's really hard. Guess what? That looks exactly like ADHD. And so what ends up happening is there's a lot of superficial learning. So maybe something they learned yesterday, they can't remember today, which can be really frustrating for teachers and for parents. Or even just 5 minutes ago, dude, you just did it 5 minutes ago. Why can't you do it now? Well, it's kind of like Swiss cheese, right? What actually grabbed on? Because that amygdala is so strong, it actually cuts off our prefrontal cortex, which is important for learning and organizing and all the things that we want our kiddos to do. It limits executive functioning, which we already know is impaired for our kiddos with ADHD, but we see increased difficulties with attention, distractibility, impulsivity, difficulties organizing and planning, just getting started on things, sustaining their attention and effort to finish things, persistence. I will often ask kiddos a riddle in my office. That's one of the first things that I'll do is ask them this riddle that's really hard, but they only need to ask me 5 yes/no questions. And so many of them just start crying. That executive functioning part of their brain just shuts down. I can't do it. And so we see a lot of these things. Now, even though anxiety is a big problem and so many of our kiddos are suffering from anxiety and we've seen a huge increase since COVID, it can be prevented. And it's the most treatable disorder as well. And so that's really important. I don't want to get into too many causes because we're all predisposed to anxiety. We are ancestors of anxious people. So we're just all, we all have an amygdala. We can all be predisposed. There are a lot of stressors, though, in our kiddos' life. Now, a lot of these things are similar from generation to generation to generation. We've all had to deal with parents. Most of us have had to deal with teachers and school and all of those sorts of things. So I think it's really important to think about, there are some generational stressors, but here's the thing. This generation, our Gen Zs and alphas, we are seeing way more depression, way more anxiety, way more self-harming behaviors and suicide than any other generation. And so I am going to talk about one significant stressor, even though there's lots. I'm going to talk about one significant stressor. And that is devices, social media, everything that they can access online. They have a crisis-saturated world at their fingertips. Little kids, I hear them talking about the Ukraine war, right? And yes, there's been war in the past, but you didn't hear it. You couldn't just say, hey, Google, what's happening in the world today, right? It's at their fingertips. They're seeing so many things. And a lot of our kids and even teenagers, they have this magical thinking. They have such a hard time. Their brain has a hard time processing and even realizing, okay, a tsunami is happening on the other side of the world. It's hard for them to separate that that's not happening here. And that amygdala can't tell the difference between seeing a real danger and just thinking about it. And so they're actually just making themselves more stressed out. And when they're seeing this crisis saturated world, that's just making everything so much harder. No exceptions. We've seen within the research, all screen time is linked to less happiness. We see an increase in loneliness, an increase in depression, suicidal thinking, anxiety, everything. And I'm going to tell you guys, we've got this shared delusion with social media, and especially during COVID. Well, my kiddos need to have their phone and their devices and social media accounts so they can stay connected with their friends. That's not true. I actually have a high school daughter. She does not have a single social media account. And she's thriving. They do not need it, but we get sucked in and we get addicted to it. And it's even worse if there's anxiety and ADHD, that they're not able to regulate any of those. And we're actually seeing those kiddos, the more time they have with screens and social media, they're actually more isolated because they're not connecting, they're following, they're scrolling, they're feeling like they're missing out when they see everybody else has this big happy life. So there's so many things. I mean, that's a whole other webinar in and of itself. Ooh, I missed a one. Everything is worsened if we've got a techno cocoon, meaning if they have a device in their bedroom, we're making everything worse. So again, that's a whole other topic. I don't want to spend too much time there because there's a lot. What we do need, so that's one piece that we do have control over, and that's the only reason why I wanted to bring that up, because it does contribute to anxiety quite significantly. But what are some other things that maintains anxiety? This is so important for you guys to know, because unwittingly, we are making our kiddos' anxiety worse, even when we think that we're trying to help them. Usually our best intentions. It's kind of like there's a Seinfeld episode, Opposite George, where George decides to do everything against his intuition. And that's kind of what parenting is, especially when you're parenting an anxious child. Probably what you're doing is actually making anxiety worse. Kids learn anxious behaviors from the important adults in their life, including parents. So there's a couple of things that we do. Catastrophic language. Safety language is fantastic. Hey, kiddo, lock the door behind me. Don't answer it for anybody. Period. That's all we need to say. But we add the catastrophic language because otherwise someone's going to come in and they're going to steal you and steal all our stuff, right? Good safety language. Hey, kiddo, throw your seatbelt on. We add the catastrophic language. Otherwise, you're going to go flying through the windshield, smash your brains in, and be brain damaged for the rest of your life, right? We add that catastrophic language. No, it's the most dangerous word in our language because it releases stress hormones in your brain and the kid's brain. And so that can be a lot of anxiety. And then now we're fighting, right? We're getting into a fight. Being too strict with our kiddos creates a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. And it's not even this kind of strictness. It's even, hey, kiddo, can you just make sure you put your cup up against, it doesn't spill over the edge? Hey, kiddo, can you make sure you put your shoes away? Hey, kiddo, can you hang up your scarf? Hey, kiddo, can you get out your homework? Hey, kiddo, can you... They're just getting so much corrective feedback. And our kiddos with ADHD, they get more by the time they're 12, 20,000 more pieces of negative feedback than kids without ADHD. And so that's very anxiety provoking. Everything, 95% of what's coming out of adults' life is corrective feedback. Or on the other side, we're always softening the blow. We've got this society of everybody gets a trophy, but kids are never learning about disappointment and failure. They need to learn those things. That's what builds resilience. Or we're trying to soften. They do lose a game. Oh, but you know what? Your goalie was off their game. Or your D was off. You played awesome, right? No, you're all part of a team. What could you do together? How could you help support your team members? Those kinds of things can be really contributing to anxiety. Rushing, if your kiddo's like la da 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 da, looking at the ceiling, and you're trying to get out, come on, you got to get to school and I've got a meeting. That reinforces anxiety. Now you're stressed, they're stressed. What does that do to their learning? They're going to school where they need to be calm and learning, but their amygdala is triggered. Sometimes we push our kids. I remember going to one of these, baby classes, and we're supposed to go underneath the parachute and it's going to be so much fun. And there's this little 2-year-old crying, screaming. It's so overwhelming. It's overstimulating, doesn't want to go under. And mom's like, it's going to be the best thing ever. It's going to be so much fun. Pushes him under. Guess what? He's even more stimulated. And now mom, the person that he trusts, is throwing him under, and he doesn't feel, that attachment and that trust anymore. We push our kids too much. Or we'll say, there's nothing to worry about, kiddo. Don't worry about it. There's nothing to worry about. That gets them stuck in a loop. Constant reassurance, right? They never learn to cope for themselves. They're never learning those skills themselves. So they're always relying on you. And I've actually seen OCD develop before my eyes just because of how much parents were making sure that they're reassuring their kiddos all the time. It's okay, nothing's going to happen. So they're not developing the skills, and we're minimizing how they feel. And that's a problem too. Now, when that amygdala, that little pink, emotional part of our brain, when that's in a high stress state, that amygdala becomes a stop sign for our prefrontal cortex. Literally, the blood is rushing out of our prefrontal cortex. They're not thinking. Any rational thinking is out the window. So it's literally going in one ear and out the other anytime we're trying to talk to our kiddos. So that's really important to think about, and it's not just anxiety. Even if your kiddo's angry, you can't talk to me like that. You can't hit your brother. It's all going in one ear and out the other. We're just escalating because they're trying to protect themselves. We're just contributing to it. Now, here's some things that we need to remember. Anxiety, it wants certainty and predictability. It's usually our kids get freaked out when they don't know what's going to happen. They want certainty and predictability, and it wants comfort. It wants your reassurance. So anytime you're giving those things, you're making anxiety worse. Asking why questions, they're already so overstimulated. They can't think. They can't process. It's not fair to turn to this already overwhelmed child to start asking questions. And just to be honest, any talking that we're doing is making anxiety bigger, because it's like, see, mom and dad, they're engaging in this conversation. Obviously, this is a big deal. I really should be anxious. Blaming genetics and brain chemicals, that's a huge problem. And especially as they get into teenage years, if they believe, I've just always been told I was anxious. I come by it honestly, everybody in my family is anxious. That creates permanence. And permanence is a major anxiety trap because it instills hopelessness and helplessness that nothing can ever change. I'm always going to be stuck like this. And that's the number one barrier that I need to overcome in my work. That's a big challenge, especially when I'm working with my teenagers and young adults. We bubble wrap our kids, right? We're always protecting them. Watch out. Be careful. We put in accommodations, and this is a way of bubble wrapping. Accommodations is enabling. We are enabling our children. We are making anxiety worse. And this is a huge thing. So think about, what are you doing for your kiddo that you wouldn't be doing if not for anxiety? And so here are some examples. Maybe you're speaking for your kiddo. You're going to a coffee shop and you're ordering for them, even though they could totally order their own coffee for themselves, or going to a restaurant, right? Maybe you're sleeping with them or helping soothe them so they can fall asleep on their own. Maybe they're getting excused in class. Anytime they get overwhelmed, they get to go hang out with Mrs. K in big cushy chairs or a sensory room and things like that. Like, who wouldn't want to do that if I don't want to do my work? That stresses me out. We're actually making it worse. So think about all of these things that you might be doing. If you can start changing these things that you're doing, that can make all the difference in the world. You don't even necessarily have to get help for your kiddo, because you're just by taking away the accommodation, they're going to have to learn the skills to be able to cope in the situation. So anything we do, hey kiddo, let me check over your homework. I'll totally check it over for you. Don't worry before you hand it in. Or you know what? You're having problems with a friend at school. I'll come into the school and I'll talk to your parents or to your teacher. No problem at all. You don't want to ride the school bus? That's okay. I'll just drive you. Not a biggie. Or you go to school. Why don't you go for the morning? And if you're feeling stressed out, I'll pick you up. Or you go to the sleepover, and in the middle of the night, doesn't matter what time, I'll come pick you up. You just call anytime. Whenever we do that, we are telling our kiddos, guess what? You can't handle it. But that's what anxiety is already telling them. They're already feeling like I can't handle it. So anytime we do those things, giving comfort, giving certainty, giving predictability, we are reinforcing anxiety's story that I can't handle it. And the other thing is, and I know it's hard because a lot of our parent heartstrings, we want them to feel better. We want them to be successful. We want them to do all these things. But this is usually the point that I can sell parents on this. When you jump in to save your kids and to make them feel better, you're actually harming their brain development. It's cutting off their ability to make the networks, to problem solve, to cope, to figure things out on their own, and it ingrains that anxiety. And we're actually making our kiddos more vulnerable because they don't have opportunities to experience the stress, right? So their confidence, their resilience, it's stunted. And so one of the things that we really need to do is watch out for these dependency traps that we're creating for our kiddos. One more hug, 2 more hugs, 1 more kiss. I actually do a parenting podcast with my husband, and just this week our episode was called "How Did We Get Here?" Because oftentimes it's little things. We'll give 1 more kiss. Okay, kiddo, you can come sleep with me one night, just one night. And we do these little things, and then all of a sudden, it's an hour-long process to get our kiddos into school. Or all of a sudden, they're sleeping with us full time, and it doesn't go away. I have so many teenagers and even teenage boys who are still sleeping in their parents' room. It doesn't go away. So we really got to watch out for these dependency traps. And it usually starts with those small things. Okay, 1 more thing. So what do? Anxiety is a family problem. Anxiety is a family solution. So we want to make sure that we are working as a family and first changing how we are accommodating and responding to anxiety. So that's the first part. That's the most important part. Look, we're already almost done. And I only got through one part of the compass, but that's why. The second piece is connecting. How we respond is really important. We have to become emotion coaches, just like a coach or a violin instructor, piano instructor. They can't go up onto the stage for the kiddos or out onto the field or ice to play for the kiddos. They are there for support. And that's kind of what we need to do. We need to learn to be effective communicators. And the number one killer of communication is talking. So we got to stop talking. That's a huge trap. And that's true anyways for any emotion regulation difficulties. Just stop talking. So talk less, listen more. Figure out what's going on. We want to validate and acknowledge. And if it's anxiety, I'm scared that there is a monster under my bed, we want to jump in. Instead of trying to jump in and fix it, it's like, oh man, I'd be scared too. No wonder if you think a monster's under your bed, right? But also if they're angry, you're the worst parent ever. You're always yelling. You're so mean. You know, in our head, we might be like, well, I wouldn't have to yell if you just did the thing that I said, right? I wouldn't have to be mean. But it's like, oh man, I can see how you think I'm mean. I'm yelling all the time. That sucks, dude. We want to be able to validate and acknowledge. We need to calm that amygdala down so that they can start thinking any talking we're going to do in one ear and out the other. So we just want to be present and listen, even if they're yelling at us, even if they're being disrespectful. It's like, oh man, you're really upset. Later on, you can have the conversations if you need to, but they probably know what you're going to say anyway. Anytime I have kids come in and parents want to start in on a lecture, I stop the parents and I say, kiddo, what are your parents going to say in this lecture right now? And almost verbatim, kids know exactly what their parents are going to say. They've already heard it, but they're having problems in that moment. They're hurt, they're pained, that they don't feel safe. And so we need to create that safety. Those are the first 2 pieces. Literally, if you could just take those 2 pieces and learn to respond differently to your kiddos, that's going to make all the difference in the world when it comes to anxiety. The rest of the compass is really the kid skills. So I'm going to fly through this piece because I really want you working on those first two, but I'll give you an overview of this. Because we're asking kiddos to do hard things, we need to make sure they're inspired. We got to get their motivation, and especially if you've got a kiddo with ADHD as well, right? We know that external reinforcement is really important. We need that confidence over their anxiety. Why is this important to you? I'm not going to go into that too much more, but we want to make sure that they've got the buy-in. Then we want to externalize it and expose it. That's why blaming genetics is so problematic. They think it's inherent within themselves. And a lot of our teenagers they get their identity all wrapped up in, I'm anxious and I'm never going to change. So we want to externalize it. We want to pull it out here. You're not your worry, right? It's just like a medical diagnoses, diabetes. Once we can name it, we can tame it. We know exactly what it is that we need to do. So it's the same thing. I love using gremlins. This is our gremlin. Now we can work as a team against this trickster gremlin, this trickster amygdala. Loki is another one that I've been loving lately, actually. The Marvel character, he's the god of mischief. That's kind of what our amygdala is like. It doesn't know that the world's not full of saber-toothed tigers anymore. So it's tricking us. Our brain is so easily tricked. And so we can externalize, there's the gremlin. Oh, there's Loki up to his mischief again, trying to freak you out. They need to learn a little bit about their brain. So when we expose it, we can remind, yeah, that's the amygdala, or Bob, or George, or darkness, or stripe, whatever we want to call it. That's the story he likes to tell. He's really trying to make it hard today, right? Oh, look, your heart's pounding. Well, no wonder. Your brain thinks that you're being chased by a tiger. It's trying to pump all that blood to your big muscles. You feel lightheaded? Well, that makes sense because you're breathing really shallowly because that blood to your big muscles needs to be oxygenated. So learning about how anxiety is affecting the body, how it's affecting our thinking, that can be really important. We're reminding it how it works. Once we can externalize it, we need to accept it. And this is a really, really important piece because oftentimes a lot of the strategies that we try to use, we're trying to reduce this anxiety dial. I forgot to put a big red X. We have zero control over that anxiety dial. So anything you do to try to eliminate anxiety is not going to work. You're actually going to make anxiety worse. Breathing. Just breathe, kiddo. What happens when they can't calm by breathing? If we're trying to eliminate that anxiety, they're going to feel worse and they're going to feel like I can't change. There's nothing that's going to work. That hopelessness, helplessness comes in. So stop trying to get rid of anxiety. We can't. We have zero control over that emotional brain. It's the fastest, strongest, oldest part of our brain, the only part of our brain that was fully developed when we're born. We have zero control. Okay. The only thing that will calm that amygdala, because it's revving the body up to run. It doesn't know the difference between being eaten by a tiger and having to write a math test. So it wants your body to do something physical to protect itself. So that is one anxiety hack. If we do something physical, your brain will be like, okay, you're doing what you need to do to protect yourself. If I try to sit down and relax, the brain is just going to go, what are you doing? You're going to get eaten. So a lot of times when we try to sit and relax and get rid of our anxiety, we're making it worse. So what we need to focus on instead is this acceptance style. That's what we're focusing on is, oh man, today of all days, this sucks. Well, you got to come along. So I love the analogy. Kids do great with analogies and metaphors. I am 7 years older than my brother, and I'm a kid of the 80s. There was a lot of fun to be had in the 80s, let me tell you. But I had to babysit my stupid, annoying brother. I couldn't ditch him. It would be really bad for me if I ditched him. I couldn't do that. And he's severe ADHD, so he'd probably get into a lot of trouble too. Couldn't ditch him. So it's one of those things, today, really, I have to babysit you today? I wanted to go out. Well, come on then. And that's kind of what it's like with anxiety. Really, you're so annoying. Well, let's go. I'm still going to go to school. I'm still going to write my test. I'm still going to go to the party. I'm still going to go and live my life. Right? That's kind of where we want to get kids to. And then, if you've ever had a little brother, you're like, does anyone hear that really annoying whining sound? Right? And it's just, that's kind of how we want to start responding. He's still there. Anxiety's still there. We can't get rid of it, but we can change how we respond to it. And that's what all about acceptance is. Because the minute we try to push them away, we've got 50,000 thoughts a day. And if they've got ADHD, it's 100,000 thoughts a day. And if they've got ADHD and anxiety, it's 150,000 thoughts a day. There's a lot of thoughts, and a lot of them are wonky thoughts. We can't get rid of them. It's like trying to push a beach ball into the water. What's going to happen? It's going to come back and hit you back in the face. Our brain's got this ironic processing. So as soon as I say, don't think of your left hand, whatever you do, don't think of your left hand. You've probably never thought of your left hand before until I said, don't think about it, right? Then our brain immediately globs onto it. So any elimination strategies, trying to push them away, does not work. It's just going to make it stronger. So that's why we need to accept. Once we can accept, then we can detach a little bit. And so we can teach our kids that our thoughts are not trustworthy. Talking about it is never going to work. We actually have to do things. And so one of the things to teach our kiddos that our brain is easily tricked is we can make a list of things that maybe people believed once, but don't believe anymore, because things change, even things that were truth. There was a time where people believed that the earth was flat. And I guess apparently there are people who still believe it's flat. So I'm sorry if you're a flat earther, but for you round earthers, just because, we believe something doesn't actually mean it's true, right? And so if you were to call a flat earther out, they would get angry, they would defend themselves, and they would say why our brain is being brainwashed, right? The government's trying to brainwash our brain. So anxiety is kind of like that. Anxiety is kind of like a cult leader, right? That just wants to suck us in. Nobody knows when they're in the cult. And so this reverse hypnosis happens. That's where we get sucked in with all the reassuring and things like that. But things change. Just because we believe it doesn't mean it's true. So quickly to yourself, how long do you think it takes for gum to digest if you swallow it? The things our parents tell us. I learned 7 years. The most common 7 years, 30, or never, right? It's just in there. But guess what? It's no more than a week. It's just like anything else. It's out of our system within a week. Think about how much of our brain do we use? Hollywood would want us to think that we only use 10% of our brain, but we actually use all of it. Camels. What do you think camels have in their humps? I remember going to the zoo in grade 3 and my teacher telling us it was water in camels' humps, but it's actually fat. Even teachers taught me the wrong thing. So we can talk about things. Just because we believe something doesn't mean it's true. And guess what? Our eyes can trick our brain too. So do optical illusions. Hey kiddo, which cup looks bigger? The one down on the table looks way bigger than the one up on the block, but they're both exactly the same size. Our brain is easily tricked. If you can see a white triangle upside down here, your brain is being tricked. There is no white triangle. Our brain fills in the gaps. And so it's this illusion of fear that fills in the gaps. So I actually have a great example. If we hear a scratch at the door, maybe we will think it's a burglar. I just had that the other day. Well, it was a little while ago, I guess, but I was coming downstairs. It was between 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, pitch black out, everybody's sleeping and somebody's trying to get in the front door. And then shortly thereafter, my dogs are going wild. The back door from my garage into the house starts to open. What do I think? Burglar. Someone's trying to break into the house. I run upstairs to tell my husband somebody's breaking into the house. He did nothing. He kept sleeping. I ran back downstairs. I have no idea why I did that, but it ended up being my little girl. So immediately our amygdala cuts off our prefrontal lobe, even anxiety experts, right? I immediately fill in the gaps. And we fill in the gaps with a conspiracy theory. Something bad is about to happen. But I forgot. I knew she had a sleepover, but I forgot she had a practice early in the morning. So she had to come home, get her gear to be at practice for 5:30. So, we fill in the gaps. Now, here's the next most important thing. Really fast and furious. How you respond, that's the very important. And how you respond is going to help this dare and defy. Because a lot of kids avoid. I can't do it, even the riddle. I can't do it, Caroline. It's too hard. I can't even think of a question. I can't go to school. I can't do this. And especially if there's ADHD, that persistence can be really hard. They avoid. But we got to do things differently. Anxiety and worries, they become a disorder when we do what anxiety wants. And anxiety wants us to avoid life. Our brains are built to be anxious and depressed. So it is very happy if we were at home in bed with covers over our head all day, right? So we got to get out there and stretch our comfort zones. And that's what this is all about. 90% of what kiddos learn is through experience. Talking about it, telling them not to worry is never going to change their brain. We want to rewire their brain. The speed of recovery, their ability to manage anxiety, directly relates to their willingness to feel anxiety. And so that's the third dial. We've got our acceptance dial. Come on. It sucks that you're here, but I'm still going to go to school, and I'm willing to be uncomfortable. I'm willing to feel anxious anyways. If they're willing to feel anxious and do life, they are going to be successful. They're going to learn how to cope it. So this is the goal, is building their worry tolerance. And as soon as you swoop in to try to fix things and reassure them, you are breaking that down. They're never learning this skill. So they need to learn to face their fear without safety behaviors, without one more kiss from you, without their little stuffy. Just like sports guys, their lucky red sock. Can't go play my game unless I got my lucky red sock. The red sock has nothing to do with it. So we want to leave those at home to show you, hey, you can go still win your game without anything bad happening. They can see, hey, it wasn't so bad. Or it was bad. It was just as bad as I thought. Everybody did laugh at my new haircut, but they still handled it. Even if the bad thing happens, I was still able to handle it. I'm still living another day, right? And that's really important. So when we look at anxiety, they need resilience, and resilience needs opportunities. So we want to give our kiddos as many different opportunities as we can, lots of different experiences. As soon as my kiddos were able to start flying by themselves at 8 years old, guess what they did? And maybe we don't have the means to let our kids go on a flight by themselves to go see grandma and grandpa. But I tell you, my little one, when she first went, it was all these questions. Us answering their questions is only answering their filling their answer bank. We're not actually helping them cope. So the best answer when they've got all these questions, who's going to be there? What time are you going to be home? What's going to happen? I don't know, kiddo. I don't know if someone's going to break into our house tonight. I don't know if a monster's going to eat you tonight. I don't know what's going to happen on the airplane, where you're going to sit. I don't know, but you let me know. You go figure it out and come back and let me know. And so when she went, my little one, when she flew to grandma's, it was all this fear and all of these questions. But on the way back, she was like, I got this. Hey, pilot, like, how's it going? Hey, air stewardess, can I just have, and she did her order. I want the snack box and a Kit Kat and a little bit thing of Pringles, right? Like, she knew what to order. She knew it. They learn through experience. And that's true for anything. I know that you are wise. I know you've had wonderful life experiences that you want to share with your kiddos. Well, even today, it's supposed to snow here today. In May, it's unbelievable. But my kiddos wore shorts. I know that's probably not a bad or not a good idea. But me to tell her that it's going to go in one ear and out the other. Yeah, mom, it's fine. Because yesterday it was 70 degrees, right? Yeah, mom, it's fine. Well, she's going to learn. Okay, mom, maybe you're right. So they need to learn their own experiences. That's so important. So we want to give them lots of things. And, one of the things that we do as parents is we instill perfectionism. So if you celebrate Christmas and have a Christmas tree, I see a lot of times where there's the kid tree. They can decorate however they want, kind of back in the corner, but then the one that's shown to everybody, the beautiful one, I only touch that. Or if you're icing a birthday cake, your kids are helping you, but you go back through and try to fix things. That's very anxiety provoking. Perfectionism is actually a form of OCD because I need to go back and check and check and check and recheck and fix and fix and fix, or seek the reassurance piece. So let them do hard things. Let them work with the hammer. Let them play with fire within reason, right? We want reasonable sorts of risk. Let them climb high in a tree. Even if you're freaking out inside, the minute you go, you're too high, come down, come down, come down, that's anxiety provoking. I don't know about you, but when I drive with my mother in the passenger seat, she doesn't say anything, but she'll like pretend to slam on the brakes with her hand, and she'll grab onto the handle, and that freaks you out, right? And then I'm looking, I'm distracted. What did I miss, right? That's anxiety provoking. So thinking about letting them do these things with confidence. And that's a great response too. So if they're too high in the tree, you freaking out is going to freak them out, and they're more likely to fall. So it's like, hey, look at how high you went. Wow, dude, let's see how fast you can come down to the bottom, right? It's just like when they're learning to walk. Babies are learning to walk. We're all like, hey, yeah, come on. Yeah, keep coming. And if they fall down, we're like, yeah, keep on coming. You got it. We're not like, are you okay? Watch out for the table. We don't do that because they're going to freak out. They're going to drop down. They're not going to want to walk. So that's the kind of air we want to have. So there's a few different responsibilities. Think about, and it's not just anxiety. What are you doing for your kiddos that they can do for themselves? If they know how to work an iPad or a phone, they can easily work a washing machine or a dryer. So there's lots of different things that they could be doing. And it's not just anxiety things that we want to be stretching out of our boundaries, doing hard things. I give riddles. That keeps their amygdala out of, we want to train the prefrontal cortex to keep that amygdala in its place so it doesn't take our prefrontal cortex offline. We want to get it back online. We want to strengthen that connection. And doing hard things every single day is the way. So I would make it a rule. Do something hard every single day. And just as a final note here, if you are doing good as a parent, your kiddo's probably doing good too. So if your kiddo's not doing good, take a look and see what you need to do for yourself first, because we do see a huge, especially with anxiety. If you've got a lot of anxiety, it's going to be so much harder to help your kiddos with anxiety. As I mentioned, I've got 2 podcasts, one, Overpowering Emotions. Right now, this year, it's all been anxiety, everything to do with anxiety, but it is going to be about emotion regulation, just managing those big emotions. And then Parents of the Year is the parenting podcast that I do with my husband. So definitely check those out. And you can get a free worries guide from my website, and definitely follow me if you want. And now I'm happy to answer any questions.
That was terrific. The information was just great, and we got a lot of great questions.
Good.
And let me just, before we start the Q&A, I'd like to thank Play Attention once more for sponsoring this webinar. And now we'll get to the questions. How can you help a child who's convinced they can't handle something or they can't learn the skills to handle it?
We have to show them otherwise, right? And so we're not going to tell them. There's a few different things. I think it just depends on what it is. Let's say it's writing. I'm just going to take something super easy. I can't write. I like to break it down in parts, because one of the thinking traps, and I actually like to create henchmen. So we've got our gremlin, but they work with all of these other mischievous guys. And they're this thinking trap. So one is permanence Pete. Right? I can't do it. I'm never going to be able to do it. But if we break writing down, we put writing up here. Well, can you write your name? Well, yeah, Caroline, I can write my name. How about the letter A? Well, yeah, I can write the letter A. Can you copy this sentence? Yeah, I can do that. So we're starting to show them, we're just asking them questions. We're not telling. Never tell. We want to ask questions to get them thinking, well, yeah, I can do all of those things. And I like actually making them into different colored boxes, because all of a sudden, if red is what I can't do and blue is what I can do, they see all of these blue writing boxes of all the things that they can do. And so that's one way for them to start realizing, oh, wow, I can do that. I didn't have this in this presentation, but another thing that I like doing is having a Venn diagram. So 3 circles that are overlapping. And on the right side, you're going to have success. So things that you can do now that you couldn't do before, maybe riding a 2-wheel bike, learning to read, riding a scooter, playing a video game, right? All of those things you're going to write in pen. Over on the other side, the far side, those are all the hard things. Put them on a sticky note. And I would have different kinds of sticky notes, right? Because it's temporary. We got to show them permanent Pete or permanent Paula is just a thinking trap. So we put the hard things on a sticky note. And then what are we going to work on, bud? We're going to move whatever's hard into the middle circle. That's our working on circle. And they're going to work on it, and they're going to practice. And maybe we're going to scaffold, and we're going to create small things. If it's learning to write an essay, we're going to start with learning to write a sentence successfully, building up that success. Once they feel successful, guess what? We can put that over and write it into the success. So the visual support is going to be really helpful, because that amygdala is right next to our hippocampus, which is our memory store. So we remember our fails and our fears and all the bad things that have ever happened to us. We don't remember our successes. So having something visual to help remind us of the successes that we've had and to see the progress we're making is so important. I could talk about that a lot more, but those are 2 quick little things that I would say.
Okay. So we have a few questions, different versions of the same question. Where's the line between supporting and enabling? And you did talk about this, but yet we're still getting questions, and people are seeking some additional information and perhaps examples.
Yeah, so we definitely want your response should be supportive and confident that they can do it. So the supportive is, oh man, that amygdala is really freaking you out today. You don't want to go to school. Oh man, no wonder you feel sick because your food, your tummy doesn't want to digest when it feels like it's, getting eaten by a tiger. So it throws acid into your stomach. That makes sense. No wonder you feel sick. So we're supportive, we're empathizing, we're reflecting. So we want to make sure that they feel heard, that we do, because they're just going to hold on to the anxiety. You don't understand me. Nobody's going to get it. I'm going to hold on to it. So we want to make sure they do feel heard and we understand their perspective. Oh, dude, the monster, he's back again. Right? We want that. Then on the confidence side of things, well, let me know how school goes today. Right? Or let me know in the morning if you got eaten by a monster. But there's other things, obviously. There's some skills that we need to make sure that our kiddos know. We need to make sure that they're bought into the plan, but that's it. I know that you can handle the situation. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know if you're going to get eaten by a monster. Maybe there's some things we do know, but we've got to be careful because I've heard parents say, dude, nobody's going to break in. Everything's locked up. And then the house gets broken into. And guess what? Now the anxiety's gone through the roof. So we want to make sure that we're not promising and making that predictability. I don't know, but I know that you've got the skills to handle it, that you're going to figure it out and you come back and report to me. So a specific example, well, I mean, maybe it is going to school. I'm so scared that I'm going to throw up. Right? Oh man, well that makes sense because this is what your body's doing. Okay, so you go to school, you let me know how it goes. And we'll put a big X, big X at the end of the day. If you don't throw up, we'll put a big X on the calendar so you can see whether or not you threw up. We can't convince them that they haven't thrown up in 572 days, right? So that's going to be really important. You let me know how it goes. And I don't know if you're going to throw up. Like those are the kind of pieces.
Okay, that's a great answer. Very helpful. Another question is if they're already in college, is it too late to fix this?
No, not at all. Not at all. Actually, in the teenage years, young adult years, the brain is at its most efficient, most powerful. It's a great time for them to be learning things. But it is also a very vulnerable time for the brain because anxiety can be ingrained. But even adults, they can learn how to do it. It's just harder. It takes a little bit more time. But even at the university, their brain is still really powerful. So no, earlier intervention is important, certainly, but we can always still work on it. The biggest barrier that I find with the older kiddos, like I had mentioned already, was just that sense of permanence, that nothing is going to change. I'm always going to be like this. And so there's going to be some precursor work just to get them understanding, hey, I can change my brain. I can change my IQ still, especially in those teenage, early adult years. I can change my social brain. I can change my math brain. I can change my anxious brain.
Someone asked, COVID fear is real and it's affected so many. How do you help a child when his or her anxiety is if the what ifs are valid of a fear?
Yeah. So COVID, that's why we've seen such a huge increase with COVID. If you've got a kiddo with diabetes, if you've got a kiddo with food allergies, oftentimes we get sucked in with the what ifs because there is a real big what if. So there's reasonable safety behaviors. A reasonable safety behavior is wash your hands before you eat, right? Wash your hands after you've been in a public place. We want to make sure that we're definitely doing those things. It becomes excessive, though, every time they touch anything, even in their own home, they're constantly washing for 20 minutes, and then they turn off, and then they get freaked out again. They start washing their hands. So when it goes to excess like that, I think that that's really important. So it's looking at what their feared outcome is. What is it that they're worried about? I don't care about the trigger. We don't need to get caught up in what those triggers are, but understanding that I can handle whatever that situation is that I'm scared about and what I fear. And they don't necessarily know the fear. It's just the discomfort. And I imagine with COVID, it's just the uncomfortable feeling that comes. They're not actually necessarily scared that someone's going to get sick or die. If they do, then that's okay. We can work on that. But it's being able to, through experience, go out and try different things that are anxiety provoking. And maybe it's not necessarily COVID related at first, because they're probably anxious in lots of different areas. Can they go into a convenience store and get their own chocolate bar while you wait in the car? You know, can they go ride the elevator by themselves downstairs while you take the stairs? So looking for other opportunities first for them to be able to expand that confidence is going to be really important.
Okay. A woman asks, her son is almost 8. How do you know which is more important to treat, ADHD or anxiety?
Yeah, so it's kind of like the chicken and the egg, right? Because they make each other worse. If you've got an ADHD kiddo, that anxiety is making it worse. If you've got anxiety, the ADHD is going to make the anxiety worse. So it's looking at what's most impairing, and making sure, like, oftentimes when we manage ADHD, the anxiety kind of goes away. Not all the time. Now, if there is a comorbid diagnoses, then we're working on, it's really all the amygdala. We're still working on taming that amygdala to keep our prefrontal cortex on. So it doesn't matter if it's I'm just getting distracted by something versus I'm worried about something. It's all the same process that we're working on. And that's what I love about, looking at doing hard things just as much as doing scary things. So we're treating both at the same time. Now, in terms of medications, though, I'm not an advocate for medications for anxiety, only because that's another safety behavior where people, and especially as they get into adulthood, believe I can't function, I can't cope unless I'm on medication. So if it was about medication question, I would say it's the ADHD. That's what we're medicating. But we do need to be careful, because if it is more anxiety, we know stimulants can make anxiety worse, right? So we've really got to be careful. And that's a conversation you're going to have with your doctor. There are non-stimulant medications like Strattera, for example, where it's, if we take a stimulant, it's about 95% effective for attention, ADHD. Strattera is about 75% effective, but it's not a stimulant. So it's not also making anxiety worse. So it's really looking at what's most impairing and then going from there. If there's sleep impairments, you want to address the sleep, because sleep is just going to make it so much harder to manage that amygdala anyway. So it's just looking at what's most impairing.
Okay. For a child who has ADHD and anxiety, how much screen time is too much? Should this be limited to, say, 30 minutes?
Yeah, it depends on age. We know under 2, they should have 0 access to screens at all. For younger kiddos, elementary, junior high, they shouldn't have more than an hour. High school, it should be 2 hours, but we know on average kiddos have 10 hours of screen time a day, and that's including schoolwork and things like that, but they shouldn't have more than 2. 2 leads to addiction. And I know it's hard. I've got a high school daughter. It's really hard to limit it within that 2 minutes. But when you've got an anxiety, ADHD brain, screens are so stimulating, and that amygdala is so rewarded. And I mean, we know that all of these devices and social media and news platforms, they're made to be addicting, because they understand how our brain works and how strong that amygdala is. And that's what it's attracting. It's stimulating. So you will know if it's too much if you say, hey, kiddo, time to turn off your game. It's dinner. And they freak out and they can't come. And it's always a big fight. You know it's too much time. And so I'd say it's going to cost you more tomorrow than it is today. And so get on it now, because it's only going to be harder in the future. And yes, you might have to deal with fighting. I've had kids who've said, what's the point of living? I have nothing to look forward to. You can't take my games away, right? And then we get sucked in. Oh my goodness, here's your screens. But we don't want to do that. So you might have a few days, maybe even a week of a real hard time of behaviors, but it will get better. So I think that that's important. There's always that extinction burst, right? Where the behaviors get worse before they get better. So get on it now. I'm an easygoing parent, but screen time has been my number one non-negotiable from the time they were little.
Okay. And we have time for one more question. Any recommendations for addressing anxiety when you're in a rush? For example, when you're late for school?
Yeah, that's always so hard. So you got to figure, there's a couple of things here. One, you want to collaborate with your kiddos. Hey, kiddo, how can we have a great morning, get out the door on time tomorrow, getting along, happy, calm, right? So you want to try to create a plan with them. That's going to be really important. And then in the morning, again, hey, what's our plan to get out the door today? Now, here's the thing. You got to think about what's affecting you and let everything else go. If their hair is atrocious, they're still wearing pajamas, their teeth aren't brushed, if that's not directly affecting you, you got to let that go. What is directly affecting you is if you are driving them to school and you are going to be late. Right? So in my house, maybe not all kids have this luxury, but my girls, they know if they want to ride to school, they have to be in the car by 8:30 before all four tires, and they both have ADHD. So I literally say all four tires have to be off the driveway because our kids don't see time, right? They don't understand that. So when they know all four tires are off the driveway, mom's not driving me. And I've literally waved as they're running out the door because all four tires, if two are still on, they can still get in the car, right? And so I don't care if their teeth aren't brushed, if they haven't eaten breakfast. I know it's a challenge. So you got to figure out what your non-negotiables are. Our kiddos with ADHD, breakfast is important, right? Because we already know they're probably not going to eat their lunch because of the medication. So you got to know what your red lines are. You are probably going to still have to help your kiddos, just make sure that gets done, but let them be the boss of everything else. Making their bed, is that even important, right? So it's just kind of prioritizing what's actually important, letting them be the boss and kind of see how it goes, but collaborating with them is important as well.
Dr. Buzanko, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise with our ADHD community. Next week, our free webinar is titled The Unexpected Link Between Migraine Headaches and ADHD with Dr. Sarah Chayette. We hope you can join us. Make sure you don't miss future ADDitude webinars, articles, and research updates by signing up to receive our free email newsletters at additudemag.com/newsletters. Also, our new summer issue of the magazine is out. Read in-depth articles about inattentive ADHD, how menopause affects ADHD symptoms in women, medication vacations, and brilliant summer learning ideas. Thank you so much.